So what was it like? You know, you're in your digs, you're there lying in bed, you're doing whatever, and you get the knock on the door, clock or 10 o'clock. This is like 2 o'clock in the morning. We just played a night game. I was in bed, and so like, I want to see it at 9 o'clock in the morning. Someone else was coming back from suspension or injury, and no matter how well I'd played, I'd still get left out.
Lee Sharpe names 5 of his most hated football players. This is not gossip. Every word comes from Sharpe himself, from his autobiography, from interviews over the years. We are digging into 5 players who made his life hell, 5 men connected to Manchester United. This video takes a brutal look at one of the most misunderstood figures of the 90s through who he clashed with most. Sir Alex Ferguson was not just a difficult boss. He was the man who broke Lee Sharpe. Ferguson demanded total control over every player. Sharpe was the opposite. He was flash. He was fun. He was the first pop star footballer of the Premier League era. He did the Sharpie shuffle. He partied. He lived a rock and roll life. Ferguson hated every second of it. Sharpe says Ferguson was a bully, not just to him, to everyone. Ferguson saw Sharpe as someone who did not take football seriously. That was the death sentence. Sharpe admits they never saw eye to eye. Ferguson was aggressive. He was a massive winner. Sharpe was not like that. Sharpe wanted to enjoy himself. Ferguson wanted soldiers, not entertainers. The relationship was broken from the start. Sharpe wrote about this in his 2005 autobiography. He called Ferguson a bully. He published it for the world to read. That was the point of no return. Years later, Sharpe went further. He said Ferguson brought in a culture of greed. That is how deep the hatred runs. He makes me sick. Sharpe still feels it today. Ferguson once blanked Sharpe at an awards ceremony. He walked past him. He shook hands with Lou Macari. He ignored Sharpe completely. The man who controlled his career still had power to humiliate him. Even in retirement, Ferguson still won. Ferguson tried to control every part of Sharpe's life. He followed him to nightclubs. He checked up on him constantly. Ferguson knew everything at Manchester United. He ran the club from top to bottom. Sharpe was the first big celebrity player. That made him a target. Ferguson signed Sharpe at 1 in the morning. He woke him up at his Torquay digs. Sharpe was blown away. He was terrified. What started as dedication became suffocation. Sharpe was a threat to that control. His goal celebrations annoyed Ferguson. The Sharpie shuffle was too much. Sharpe saw it as playing like a fan. Ferguson saw it as disrespect. The house party incident tells you everything. Sharpe had just bought a house in Altrincham. Ryan Giggs called him up. Giggs was still living with his mum. They planned a Thursday night out. They thought it was fine. The match was Sunday. They invited apprentices over. They drank beer in the hallway. Around 10 at night, the doorbell rang. They thought it was their taxi. It was Ferguson. Sharpe was upstairs, waxing his hair. A teammate ran up to warn him. Sharpe looked down the stairs. He saw Ferguson with a scarlet face, froth in the corner of his mouth. Ferguson kicked the young lads out. He smacked them around the head. He kicked them up the backside. He screamed at Sharpe and Giggs to get into the living room. Then he let loose. He destroyed them both. He told Sharpe he was finished at the club. He said Sharpe could not head it, could not pass it, could not run. He said Sharpe was letting his teammates down, letting his mum and dad down, letting his family down. Then he turned on Giggs. He said the same things. He brought up their mothers. He made it personal. This was Ferguson at his most terrifying. He invaded their private space. He proved there was nowhere Sharpe could hide. No corner Ferguson could not reach. That night scarred the relationship forever. By 1996, the relationship was unrepairable. That is Sharpe's word. He told a podcast he had enough of Fergie. He was not getting help. He was filling gaps in the squad. He was unhappy. He moved to Leeds to escape. When asked recently if he could bury the hatchet, Sharpe said he was not sure. The wound is still open. The anger remains. Ferguson was building a dynasty. He would not tolerate divers. Sharpe was the original diva. Ferguson made an example of him. Ryan Giggs was Sharpe's best mate. They shared a house. They partied together. They ran around town getting into mischief. But Giggs also got Sharpe into trouble. Serious trouble. Sharpe has said this himself. Giggs always got him into trouble. The house party was Giggs's idea. Giggs called him up. Giggs suggested the night out. Then Ferguson turned up and destroyed them both. Sharpe blames Giggs for that. He says it with a smile. but the frustration is real. Giggs was still living with his mum. He used Sharpe's house as a base. That brought Ferguson to Sharpe's door. Giggs dragged Sharpe into the firing line. Sharpe eventually fled the friendship. He admitted he spent too much time with Giggs. It got him into too much trouble, so he moved on. He started hanging out with Gary Pallister and Roy Keane instead. Sharpe's entire social life became about avoiding Ferguson's wrath. The mischief with Giggs was not worth the risk. But the real damage was professional. Giggs took Sharpe's job. Sharpe was the original left-winger at Manchester United. He won the PFA Young Player of the Year award in the 1990-91 season. He was the future. Then he got meningitis. That single event destroyed his career. The 1991-92 season should have been his coronation. Instead, he was struck down by illness. He made just 9 starts in all competitions. Giggs had only debuted in March 1991, but with Sharpe out, Giggs seized the chance. He made over 50 appearances that season. He cemented himself in the left-wing role, the role that belonged to Sharpe. To add insult to injury, Giggs succeeded Sharpe by inheriting his PFA award. Then he retained it the following year. From that moment, the rivalry was over. It had not been a fair fight. Sharpe lost his place because of a medical catastrophe. Ferguson prized momentum and reliability. He cemented Giggs in the role. Sharpe was never a first-team starter again. His later complaints about being unhappy and playing bit parts all stem from this moment. The house party was not the cause. It was a symptom. Sharpe had already lost his place. He had lost his status. He had lost his future, all to his housemate. David Beckham was not Sharpe's enemy, but he hurt Sharpe more than anyone. Beckham represented the new Manchester United. He was clean-cut. He was disciplined. He was loyal to Fergie. His rise was the final nail in Sharpe's coffin at Old Trafford. Sharpe had no space left. Giggs had locked down the left wing. Sharpe tried to become a utility player. He filled in at centre mid, at left back, at right wing. But the class of '92 was rising. They were about to close off his last route to the first team. Sharpe now had a serious rival for the right midfield spot. That rival was David Beckham. Sharpe was 25 when he was sold in 1996, but in football terms, he was already redundant. He had been made obsolete by a new generation, a hungrier generation, a more professional generation in every way. This new group was about to become the backbone of one of the most successful teams in football history. Sharpe was the last remnant of the old era. There is a story Sharpe tells that sums up the tragedy. In the early 90s, Sharpe was the icon. He had the flair. He was the celebrity. He organised a large fan club barbecue event. Up to 2,000 kids attended. A young David Beckham was there. Beckham was quiet. He was shy. He was not yet a star. He saw the girls screaming for Sharpe. He turned to Sharpe in awe. He said, "Oh my God, Sharpe, you are a legend. I will never have any of this." That moment is perfect. It captures the changing of the guard. Sharpe was the original, but Beckham represented a new model, an improved model. Beckham combined Sharpe's marketability with an unbelievable work ethic. He had mental strength. Ferguson craved that. Sharpe himself has praised Beckham. He says many players might have had more natural talent than Beckham, but Beckham made the absolute most of his ability. He set an incredible standard. Sharpe recommends Beckham as the ultimate role model for any kid. In doing so, Sharpe reveals his own failing. He did not make the most of his ability. Ferguson believed that. Beckham did. Sharpe was made obsolete by a superior professional model. Now, Roy Keane was a psychopath. Sharpe has said this himself, but he also says he loves Keane to bits. This is the most paradoxical relationship of Sharpe's career. As Sharpe's social life with Giggs brought increasing scrutiny from Ferguson, he made a remarkable pivot. To escape the trouble of Giggs, Sharpe sought sanctuary with the genuinely dangerous Roy Keane. Sharpe and Keane struck up an unlikely friendship. After Keane arrived from Nottingham Forest in 1993, Sharpe became Keane's minder. He looked after him on nights out. Keane was aggressive. He was a nasty drunk at times. Sharpe put him in cabs. He sent him home. He got him out of trouble. Keane appreciated that. Sharpe is probably the only footballer Keane has ever knocked around with that he has never had a fallout with. Keane has had arguments with everybody, but not Sharpe, because Sharpe performed a valuable service. This reveals the warped logic of Sharpe's life under Ferguson. Giggs' trouble meant upsetting his manager. That was a cardinal sin. Keane trouble meant dealing with actual aggression and drunkenness on nights out. That was paradoxically safer for Sharpe's career. Sharpe's entire social calculus was no longer based on fun. It was based on navigating Ferguson's psyche. Keane had a blackness inside him. Sharpe never understood it. It came out when he drank. Keane's nickname in the dressing room was Schizo. He was an absolute psychopath on the pitch, but he was also one of the funniest people in the dressing room. He loved a laugh and a joke. Sharpe and Keane were totally the opposite. Sharpe found football to be a bit of artistry. Keane found it to be a war. Yet they got on like a house on fire. There is a story that captures this perfectly. Sharpe and Keane were on a night out. Keane had been drinking without any food. He was absolutely smashed. A group of Liverpool players walked into the same bar. It was their Spice Boys heyday. They wore white suits for the cup final. The group included Phil Babb, John Scales, and Jamie Redknapp. Keane saw his rivals. He immediately went on the attack. He destroyed them one by one. He asked Babb who the hell he thought he was. When Scales tried to act as peacemaker, Keane told him he was rubbish. He mocked his England B cap. When Redknapp tried to smooth things over, Keane asked if he was happy with his under-21 caps. He asked what Redknapp had done in the game. As Keane spluttered on, Sharpe thought it was pretty funny. This was the trouble Sharpe now courted. He was no longer the participant. He was the minder. He was the observer. Bruno Fernandes is the mystery midfielder. In recent interviews, Sharpe has voiced his annoyance with a specific Manchester United player. The target is Bruno Fernandes, the club captain. Sharpe is not keen on him. His criticisms are detailed and specific. They fall into two categories. First, attitude. Sharpe is annoyed by Fernandes's on-pitch persona. He criticises the hand-waving, the gestures, the moaning, the throwing himself around. He states that Fernandes lets himself down as a captain. Second, discipline. This is the key. Sharpe slams Fernandes for his professional indiscipline. He is hot and cold. He is ill-disciplined with his positional play. This can leave his teammates exposed. Sharpe said Fernandes's discipline sometimes puts him out of position. He tries to cover everybody else's place. He runs all over the pitch like a headless chicken. That is the negative of him playing there. Sharpe laments that for Fernandes, the discipline of standing still can be really difficult. This analysis provides the central irony of Sharpe's entire career. Sharpe's own career was defined by his flair, by his flamboyant celebrations, by his rock and roll style, all hallmarks of an expressive, emotional player. The bully Sir Alex Ferguson tried to stamp out this behaviour. That led to an unrepairable conflict. The core of their feud was Ferguson's discipline versus Sharpe's flair. Decades later, Sharpe observes Bruno Fernandes, a modern player defined by flair, emotion, and a lack of positional discipline. Sharpe's reaction is not empathy. It is not a defence of a fellow artist. It is annoyance. He critiques Fernandes for the exact same failings he himself embodied. The unrepairable conflict with Ferguson was so formative and damaging that Sharpe has adopted the discipline-focused lens of the very man he hates. The bully won in the end. He instilled his values so deeply in Sharpe that he now uses them to critique the next generation. That is the final irony. Sharpe became the thing he fought against. He cannot even see it. He looks at Fernandes and sees a problem. Ferguson looked at Sharpe and saw the same problem. History repeats. The cycle continues. But this time, Sharpe is on Ferguson's side. Lee Sharpe did not leave Manchester United. Manchester United left Lee Sharpe behind. That is the cold truth. Every name on this list shaped Sharpe's career by blocking it, replacing it, or trying to control it. Ferguson was the authority who broke him. Giggs was the friend who took his job. Beckham was the future who made him obsolete. Keane was the chaos he hid in. Fernandes is the mirror he refuses to look at. For Sharpe, these were not just teammates. They were battles he fought every day, battles he lost. His career is a study in conflict, a tragedy of what if. What if he had not got meningitis? What if Ferguson had been different? What if Giggs had not dragged him into trouble? What if the class of '92 had not risen so fast? What if he had made the most of his ability? We will never know. Sharpe was a rebel in the wrong system. Ferguson never wanted wildcards. Sharpe was the biggest wildcard of all. He paid the price. He is cemented in history as one of the great what-if talents of his generation, a player defined more by the feuds he endured than the trophies he won. That is his legacy. That is his curse.